When you walk through an airport security scanner, there's this expectation of absolute clinical precision.
Right, you want it to be perfectly accurate.
Exactly. I mean, the machine beeps, the guard glances at a monitor, and they point to an exact spot. It's threat or no threat. A totally clean binary equation.
And we really find that comforting. Human beings naturally gravitate towards systems where risk is just visible and instantly categorized.
Yeah, but then you step into the actual world of human interaction. Like you walk into a boardroom to meet a new client, or you sit down across from a total stranger at a networking event, and suddenly that mechanical scanner is completely useless.
Oh, it is gone.
Right, you are the scanner, they are the scanner, and the diagnostic landscape we're navigating is just incredibly murky.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. Yet beneath all that perceived murkiness, there's actually a deeply wired, highly predictable biological algorithm at play.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are giving you a masterclass in human connection. We're going to unpack the primal biology of first impressions, decode the secret sensory languages of the human brain, and basically give you the practical architecture to become a master communicator.
And we really should establish right away that the critical window for this connection was about 90 seconds is not just some random metric.
Right.
It's firmly rooted in evolutionary biology. Whenever you have a new encounter, your subconscious instantly triggers a fight-or-flight assessment.
This is happening before you even realize it.
Exactly. Before you consciously register, the color of someone's shirt, your amygdala is trying to answer a primitive question. And that question is this person a threat? Or are they an opportunity?
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think when people hear make a great first impression in 90 seconds, the mind immediately goes to like slick used car salesman tactics.
Oh, absolutely. The manipulation angle.
Right, putting on a mask or faking it. But this isn't about manipulation. It's about speaking directly to human nature. It's about disarming that ancient security scanner in the other person's head so that the actual substance of what you have to say can just get through.
Because that ancient scanner is entirely driven by split-second defensive protocols, the immediate overriding goal of any new interaction has to be signaling safety.
You have to prove you're safe.
Yes, you simply cannot influence a brain that is actively defending itself.
So if the brain is this alarm system, how do we actively bypass it? There was this advertising manager back in the 1960s, a guy named FX Muldoon, who was just an absolute master at this.
Muldoon was brilliant.
He really was. He sold ad space for a hugely popular magazine in England, and he had this incredibly theatrical technique for proving his value to skeptical executives.
The envelope drop. It is a stunning illustration of bypassing the logical defensive brain and striking straight at the emotional visual cortex.
So picture this. Muldoon walks into the office of a prospective client. This guy is a managing director of a mail order company, sitting behind his big desk, probably expecting a really dry pitch.
Right, he's expecting charts and distribution metrics.
Yeah, boring stuff. Instead, Muldoon just smiles, and his assistant steps forward and silently pours a massive canvas bag filled with exactly 2,467 envelopes right onto the executive's floor.
A literal mountain of mail just burying the carpet.
Exactly. The executive is stunned, and Muldoon just looks at him and says, "When you advertise with us, you can expect this kind of response. Your competitor got 2,467 replies in one day."
That is just incredible.
He secured a massive 26-week contract in under 90 seconds.
Because he captured the imagination instantly. Muldoon operated on a few core principles to achieve that kind of instant barrier-breaking connection. It starts with the absolute basics, which are eye contact and a genuine smile.
Which signals to the primal brain that you aren't hiding anything, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
From there, it moves into physical mirroring, subtly aligning your body language with theirs to create a baseline of comfort. And finally, like with the envelopes, capturing the imagination.
I do want to push back a little on that second point, though, the mirroring idea.
Okay, sure.
Because if I'm mimicking someone's posture, like if they cross their arms and I immediately cross mine, or they lean left and I lean left, doesn't that cross into creepy territory really fast?
It can definitely sound that way.
Yeah, it feels like they would think I'm mocking them.
Yeah.
A better way to look at it might be it's not about being a parrot echoing their every twitch. It's more like tuning a guitar to match another instrument so you can play in harmony instead of clashing.
What's fascinating here is the underlying neurology of that tuning process. Behavioral scientists actually refer to this as limbic synchrony.
Limbic synchrony.
Yes. We are evolutionarily wired to feel safe around people who are physically and rhythmically in sync with us. Think about a newborn infant. Its breathing and heart rate naturally sync with its mother.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
It's true. So when you subtly mirror someone's posture, or even just the tempo of their speech, you aren't mocking them. You are tapping into a deeply embedded instinct that effectively says, I am part of your tribe, and therefore you are safe with me. And it all operates entirely below the threshold of conscious awareness.
Okay, so you've tuned your guitar to their frequency, you've signaled safety, the alarm bells are off, but all that subconscious rapport is pretty useless if the energy you bring into the room is completely off.
Which brings us to the math of human communication. Dr. Albert Morabian's research really revolutionized how we understand message delivery.
The famous 55-38-7 rule.
That's the one. When we're communicating feelings or attitudes, a staggering 55% of the message is purely visual.
55%.
Yes, your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions. Then another 38% is vocal. So it's the pitch, pace, and tone of your voice.
Wow. Which leaves what, only 7% for the actual words?
Exactly. A microscopic 7% for the actual words you are saying.
That is wild. I mean, we spend days agonizing over the exact wording of a pitch deck or an email, and 93% of the impact is just how we physically look and sound while delivering it in person.
It really puts things in perspective.
And projecting what they call open body language is a huge part of managing that 55%. You know, pointing your heart directly at the person, keeping your arms uncrossed, keeping your hands visible. It all reinforces that primitive signal, I have no weapons, I am open for business.
Because mismatch is the absolute enemy here. If your open body language, that 55%, and your confident tone, the 38%, do not align perfectly with your carefully scripted words, the human brain will always default to what it sees over what it hears.
Because seeing is believing, right?
Evolutionarily, yes. Reading physical intent is an ancient survival mechanism where spoken language is relatively new. If you tell me, I am thrilled to be collaborating on this project, but your shoulders are slumped and your voice is flat, I will experience a visceral sense of distrust. The math just doesn't add up.
But getting into that open, enthusiastic state isn't always easy, especially if you've just, sat through terrible traffic or had a rough morning.
Right. Life gets in the way.
Yeah, but there's this fascinating mental exercise from the research that sounds a bit ridiculous at first, but chemically it works. It's the great, great, great override.
Well, I love this one.
Before you walk into a room, you look in a mirror or just close your eyes and say the word great 3 times, shifting the tone until it triggers a genuine, authentic smile. You are physically forcing your vocal cords and facial muscles into a state of enthusiasm.
It creates a biological feedback loop.
Right.
By manually manipulating the physical markers of enthusiasm, you basically trick your nervous system into releasing the corresponding neurochemicals.
And there is another exercise that builds on this called the office animal.
Yes, visualization is so powerful here.
Right, so imagine you are walking down your office hallway. For the first walk, picture yourself as a hippopotamus. You are heavy, slow, staring blankly ahead, just dragging yourself to the water hole.
Sounds like a typical Monday.
Exactly. Then, on the next walk, you are a kangaroo bouncy, full of springtime energy, totally joyful. And on the third walk, you are a leopard, sleek, highly aware, completely in control of your environment.
The shift in your internal state would be incredibly dramatic across those 3 visualizations.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how wildly different your colleagues' reactions would be to you on those 3 walks. When you project the hippo, people are going to subconsciously dodge you or maybe speak to you slowly.
They'll definitely avoid the hippo.
Right. But when you project the leopard, people will naturally step back, giving you space and professional respect. Your internal attitude is completely contagious. It dictates the entire room's energy before you even open your mouth.
Because attitude is an active projection. It is the atmosphere in which your words will eventually be received.
So the posture is open, the attitude is tuned like a leopard, and the primal scanner is disarmed. Now, finally, we arrive at the words, the 7%.
Yes, we finally get to the words.
But even though it is a tiny slice of the communication pie, the brain has some incredibly stubborn processing glitches that can derail everything if you aren't careful.
The brain is a meaning-making machine, but it has a fundamental inability to process negative commands directly. It simply cannot do it.
I noticed a huge flaw in how I communicate based on this. If I tell my toddler, don't run across the street, he immediately runs.
Right, because of how he processes the sentence.
Yeah, his brain has to conjure the image of running in order to understand what I'm restricting. By the time he processes the don't, the action is already happening.
The exact same glitch happens in corporate environments. If I tell you, don't think of a pink elephant, you are already thinking of a pink elephant.
We sabotage ourselves constantly with this. Someone hands us a report, says thank you, and we reflexively reply, no problem.
Which is so common.
It really is. But we just force their brain to process the word problem and associate it directly with us. The shift has to be toward positive, declarative language, telling the brain exactly what we do want.
Yes, framing it positively.
Like replying with, I'm happy to, instead of no problem, or saying, please remember, instead of don't forget.
What you're doing there is removing unnecessary cognitive processing steps. And that principle of reducing friction leads us to the most powerful tool in the 7% toolkit, sensory languages.
Oh, this is fascinating.
By the time we reach adulthood, we typically favor one of three main sensory modalities to interpret the world. It's wild when you look at the breakdown. Over half the population, about 55%, are completely visual processors.
More than half.
Yes. If you aren't showing them something, you are losing them. Then another 30% are kinesthetic. They process the world through feeling, touch, and physical sensation.
And number worse.
That leaves a tiny 15% who actually process the world primarily through sound and rhythm, the auditory learners.
And you can decode which type someone is just by watching their eyes while they think, which is amazing.
It's really a great tell.
Visual processors will often look up when they are trying to recall information as if they are literally looking at a picture painted on the ceiling.
Right.
Auditory processors will often look side to side toward their ears, literally listening for the memory. And kinesthetic, the feeling-oriented people, will frequently look down, checking in with their gut or their physical sensations.
And knowing this dictates entirely how you should frame an idea. Take a travel agent trying to sell the exact same beach vacation to 3 different clients.
Okay, yeah.
If they are talking to a visual client, the agent needs to pull out a glossy brochure and say, look at how crystal blue the water is. Picture the sunset over the horizon.
But if the client is auditory, handing them a brochure falls flat, the agent needs to change the vocabulary and say, imagine the sound of the crashing waves from your balcony and how quiet the resort gets at night.
Exactly.
And for the kinesthetic client, it's all about the physical reality. Think about the feeling of the warm sand between your toes and the weight of the luxury linens on the bed.
It is the exact same product, but fundamentally different translations.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Think about a scenario in your own office. You are in a meeting trying to get a colleague on board with a new logistics plan.
A very common situation.
Right. And they lean back and say, I hear what you're saying, but the rhythm of this rollout just doesn't sound right to me. They are practically screaming that they are auditory.
Yes, their word choices give it away.
But if you keep sliding a spreadsheet across the table saying, just look at this chart, see how the numbers line up, you are speaking 2 completely different languages.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the ultimate goal of all persuasion is removing cognitive friction. When you speak to someone's primary sensory preference, they don't have to convert your visual spreadsheet into their auditory understanding.
You save them a step.
Exactly. You bypass the translation phase entirely, making your ideas instantly accessible and deeply resonant.
Okay, so we've removed the friction. The listener's brain is primed and ready, but all of that preparation is wasted if your actual pitch is just a tangled, rambling mess.
Sure.
What is the psychological framework for delivering the message itself?
The foundational architecture is a concept called the pub policy, or the 10-second commercial. Everyone knows the standard elevator pitch, but this strips it down to its raw psychological triggers.
How does it work?
It follows a relentless 3-part formula. It goes, you know how insert problem? Well, I insert solution, so that insert benefit.
It instantly establishes relevance. Take an export consultant, for example. If someone at a networking event asks what they do, the default answer is usually something agonizing like, I'm a logistical supply chain manager for international trade.
Which is opaque, it's boring, and it completely shuts down the conversation.
Right. Instead, using the formula, the consultant says, you know how exporters struggle to find new markets and navigate complex customs? Well, I help them find those exact markets and ship on time so they can finally get a good night's sleep.
See, the objective here is not to summarize your resume. It is to trigger just enough curiosity that the listener instinctively leans in and says, oh wow, tell me more.
It's an invitation, not a monologue. But when you do have the floor for a longer presentation, the framework shifts to something called the skewer or the kebab method.
I love this analogy.
Imagine you were literally building a skewer of food. First, you have the hook, the sharp point that grabs their attention and breaks through the noise. Then, the point, your core, undeniable thesis. Next, you slide on the steak, the hard facts, the data, the logical foundation, and finally you add the sizzle, the emotional, memorable, sensory detail that makes the whole thing mouth-watering.
The sizzle is where data transforms into memory. And a brilliant way to add that sizzle is the ICOLA concept, which stands for, it's kind of like a...
Oh, using metaphors.
Exactly. It is the strategic use of metaphor to simplify complex data. Muhammad Ali was perhaps the greatest master of this. When asked about his boxing strategy, he didn't provide a biomechanical breakdown of his footwork and punching velocity.
Right, he just said, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Yes. Instantly understood, instantly memorable.
I want to pose a challenge to you listening right now. Think about the last presentation you gave. Were you just handing your audience a plate of raw steak? Just a pile of dense data without the sizzle or the hook? Because nobody wants to eat raw steak no matter how high the quality is.
No point, no presentation. Without a clear structural narrative and a vivid metaphor, raw data evaporates from the human brain almost instantly. An emotional, visually anchored story is what actually sticks.
Now, there is a massive elephant in the room here. You can have the perfect open posture. You can master the sensory vocabulary. You can build a mouth-watering kebab presentation.
Right.
But what happens if your own nervous system betrays you? What happens if stage fright or social anxiety just freezes your vocal cords before you can execute any of this?
This requires a profound shift in perspective, moving from egocentric panic to audience-centric purpose. I think about a woman from the source material named Teresa, who was a highly trained CPR instructor.
Okay.
She knew her material flawlessly, but the concept of public speaking completely paralyzed her. She was booked to do an instructional segment on a live television program, and during the rehearsal, she just froze.
Like a deer in headlights.
Rigid posture, blank stare, unable to articulate a single word, complete fight-or-flight lockdown.
She was trapped in her own head, probably entirely consumed by the fear of looking foolish on TV.
Yes. But then she experienced a radical mindset shift. She realized that she wasn't on that stage to look polished or impressive. She was there to save lives.
Oh, wow.
She shifted her focus from her internal panic to her outward purpose. Her message could literally prevent someone in that viewing audience from dying of a heart attack.
That's powerful.
Once she locked onto that outward value, the ego-driven fear just evaporated. When the cameras rolled, she took the microphone, walked directly into the crowd, and completely owned the broadcast.
She made the interaction about the audience, completely removing herself from the center of the equation. There is another fascinating approach to this involving a man named Mario who owned a sports medicine clinic. He was petrified of giving an upcoming keynote to 300 industry professionals.
300 people's a lot.
It is. But rather than just endlessly rehearsing his speech in a mirror, he decided to attack the root of the vulnerability itself. He stepped wildly out of his clinical comfort zone and auditioned for a local theater production of the Rocky Horror Show.
A medical professional putting himself on stage in one of the wildest, most exposing musicals ever written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he actually landed a lead role. He didn't just practice reciting words, he fundamentally altered his relationship with judgment. He proved to his own nervous system that he could be looked at, be evaluated, be completely exposed, and not only survive, but thrive.
This raises an important question for all of us. When you feel that knot of anxiety before a pitch, a meeting, or a networking event, where is your focus?
That's the real question.
Are you consumed with protecting your own ego, worrying about how you will be perceived? Or are you focused entirely on the value you're delivering to the audience? True connection isn't about perfectly executing a set of behavioral tricks. It's about shifting your mindset so you care significantly more about helping the other person than you do about protecting yourself.
That is a brilliant reframe. And I think, you now possess a deeply actionable toolkit. You know how to bypass the brain's primitive security system through limbic synchrony. You know how to project a contagious, open attitude.
You're ready for the room.
Right. You can translate your ideas into the exact sensory language your listener's brain prefers. You can build a razor-sharp 10-second commercial, and you know how to shift from internal panic to outward purpose.
And it is crucial to recognize that every single interaction holds this potential. Think about a business consultant who begrudgingly took his teenage daughter to a small, obscure aromatherapy shop.
Oh, I remember this story.
He could have easily just waited in the car. Instead, he walked in, struck up a conversation with the shop owner, and actively practiced these exact connection skills.
Just for practice.
Yes. And that single, seemingly random conversation eventually cascaded into him landing a massive keynote speaking gig at a 1,600-person AT&T conference 2 years later. You simply never know where the geometry of human connection will lead.
You really don't. So we leave you with this final challenge. Think back to that airport security scanner we talked about at the beginning.
Right, the binary scanner.
If a complete stranger walked up to you right now, and they only had 90 seconds to scan your posture, to process your tone, and to decode your words, what story would their biological scanner walk away with?
It's a great question.
Are you projecting a closed book, a potential threat, hiding behind crossed arms and raw data? Or are you signaling that you are a safe, dynamic opportunity? Are you open for business? Something to think about the next time you walk into a room.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.